Hello, I'm Audrey Greenberg. Welcome to Money Matters TV. I'm the founder of the Center for Breakthrough Medicines, and my co-host today is Mike Deaver, founder of Brandywine Asset Management. Our guest today is Joerg Ahlgrimm, the CEO and president of the Center for Breakthrough Medicines. First, we have a couple questions for Mike. Happy New Year. And I just wanted to, Happy New Year. So investors seem to be facing a constant dilemma right now, right? You want to stay invested. You don't want to be sitting on a bunch of cash. But then they don't want to take the risks that are in the market right now. The market seems quite lofty. Is it smart to just buy and hold stocks? Or should they try to time the market to avoid some of these big losses that might be occurring?
Well, yeah, that's the constant question that investors face. And I'd say as an investment manager, the question I get most often from people is, what should I do today? Should I stay, like now, especially because they've made so much money. They want to know, should I just stay in? Should I get out? I was at the gym last night. I ran into a friend of mine. I used to coach his son at track, and he's saying he's made more money last year, multiples, than he makes in his day job, in his retirement funds. And I've been hearing that more and more. People are making outsized gains in their retirement plans, and they want to know, should I try to lock that in? Should I continue to ride that? What should I do? There's not an easy answer because it's very difficult to time the market. And I'll show you a chart here. This is the NASDAQ going back 40 years, 40 plus 50 years. And this is why you hear people say, I just stay invested, buy and hold, don't get out of stocks. And when I showed you this, Audrey, in the early part of the show, before we came on, you said, oh, I want that. That's great. That's what I wish my portfolio looked like that. And people will say that until you actually see in that chart that you have 80% losses. So you're sitting there and you've grown your account to $100,000, $1 million, and you lose $800,000 of that $1 million in a matter of a couple of years. So it's almost impossible for people to buy and hold because they don't anticipate and they're not prepared for those types of losses. So what you end up seeing is people who are getting into a portfolio. They'll invest in stocks. They'll ride it. They'll add to it as it keeps going up because it just seems like it's easy. I don't want to miss out on it. Let's keep making a gain. Example I use is both my father-in-law and a good friend of the family who's in his late 80s. They have both made so much more money in the last few years than they anticipated having in their retirements, but they're not getting out. And they're at the point where, they've got more money than they're going to spend. You can only eat so many pizzas in retirement or whatever it might be they're doing, but they don't want to sell it because they don't want to lose the upside gains. So the question,
or they're scared of the tax.
There's tax issues as well. And I constantly stress to investors, don't let that tax tail, wag the dog. It's you've got to do what's the right thing to do with your portfolio. And if you've got enough for what you're planning on, and they both had enough a couple of years ago, so they have more than enough now. So I posed the question to them, said, well, if it goes up another 50%, how's that going to feel? Oh, that'd be great. Well, what if it drops 50%? Because it's not that uncommon that could happen as well. And they go, oh, that could really change things. So they just answered the question, for them on what they should do. And at that age, they should be getting out of those portfolios. As a younger age, there's an argument to just ride through these losses. And I think the biggest argument is this next chart I want to show you here, which is, this is from Dalbar. Dalbar is a group that measures the actual performance of investors based on the weighted flows in and out of mutual funds and ETFs versus those actual funds' performances. And what this shows you, and this is very consistent over the decades, what this shows you is that the average investor has actual results that are as much as 5% less per year on average than the performance of the funds into which they invest. So what that means is they just got into the fund and held it. They would get, for example, in a stock fund, that growth on the left of $50,000. But instead, they add money when it's going up. They take money out after it's gone down, and they end up with less than $20,000 in that. And this is a rolling 20-year window that we're looking at here. And this rolling 20-year window is very consistent over the last few decades. And same with bond funds. So the reason that you hear the preaching of buy and hold is because people are just so poor at market timing. They want to add money at the wrong time, and they want to take money out at the wrong time. So the buy and hold tends to be the mantra. We have products that we develop that are designed to protect people on the downside. So they actually call it a smarter way to buy and hold. So they can actually buy and hold, but there's protection. So in an environment like we have now, where the markets are highly valued, have gone up significantly over the last few years, they're in a position where if it drops, we could protect them from a substantial portion of that downside. It may not catch the whole upside, but over time, over a full cycle, by minimizing those losses, you're able to actually earn greater returns because you're recovering from higher levels. For the investors who aren't in a product like that, I think some of the things that you want to do is just at least rebalance the portfolios you have. So it doesn't mean necessarily trying to time it and get in and out, but when you've got technology, for example, that's run like it has so dramatically in the last decade, and that's what NASDAQ was really showing, and it is that it's just accelerated in its performance. When you've got a market like that, start reallocating, pull some of that money from the hot sectors and move it into some of those sectors that have been less performing over the last decade. That's one way to not necessarily be market timing, but through our asset allocation rebalancing, adjust your portfolio to reduce the risk over time.
Got it. And you do that between stocks and bonds, or you're doing that between different sectors within the stock market, or what do you look at? And then how are you hedging against this upside? You're using options?
Yeah. So the first question is how you do that. I don't recommend people have any money in bonds. I think it's ridiculous that people right now, especially with inflation running over 6%, that's the published number. Who knows what the real numbers are? Because I think there's some flaws in the way that's published that don't reflect on what an actual person buying products in the grocery store is facing. But if you've got 6% inflation and government bonds yielding less than 2%, you're locking in a loss. And so you don't want to do that. So I don't think there should be any money in bonds. I think there should be some reserve fund and cash, if at all possible. And then there should be the rest of the money in a broad mix of assets, equities being one of that, stocks being one of that portion of assets. But keep it by reallocating is what we're doing there. It was what I'm saying. It's not so much making big changes in moving from stocks to real estate or bonds, but within the portfolio you have, move from the things that have outperformed dramatically into things that have underperformed. Looking at, say, a 5-10 year period.
So we do have one question from the audience from Greg Mason in Philadelphia. Says, for the next few years, what is a better investment? And maybe this will touch on some of the things you're about to talk about, growth or value.
Okay. I have a chart for that. So yeah.
Love your chart.
This chart, it shows the growth and value spread over the last 40 years. And what you'll see, and this is, so if you bought growth stocks relative to value stocks, divided by value stocks. So when it's peaking like it did there in 2000, that's when growth stocks are just totally outperforming value stocks. And when it hits that trough like it did in the financial crisis, that's when value stocks have outperformed. Growth stocks have come down dramatically in relation. What you're seeing today is we're at the highest level in that ratio that we've had in the last 40 years, barring the 2000 .com boom that we had. So we're in a position now where growth stocks have dramatically outperformed value stocks. And I think it's probably a good idea. What I would recommend is people start shifting away from the growth stocks, reallocating money into the value stocks. And it very well could be that we see something like we saw in the 2000s, where value stocks outperform growth stocks by more than 2-1. And I think we're in that kind of a scenario again where that could happen.
Okay. Well, if there's anyone else out there that wants to submit their questions, here's how you send your questions to Money Matters TV.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
So with that, we turn our attention now to Joerg Ahlgrimm, our guest and president and CEO of the Center for Breakthrough Medicines. One of the hot sectors this past year in the stock market has been biotech and pharma services. We're interested to hear more about the Center for Breakthrough Medicines. So welcome, Joerg.
Thanks for having me, Audrey.
Yeah. So what is the Center for Breakthrough Medicines, and how long have you been with the firm? How did you decide to join?
Center for Breakthrough Medicines is a contract development and manufacturing organization focused on advanced therapies. We are located in the King of Prussia area, close to Philadelphia. And we have one mission, and this is to provide technologies, processes, systems, and capacity in order to enable our clients to advance their therapies to the market faster, and to make sure that they can do everything they can in order to basically save lives. Because most of the therapies our clients are working on, and we together with them, are there for life-threatening diseases. So it's very critical for us to play a vital role there. In order to do that, we're actually standing up in the Philadelphia region here in this King of Prussia area, over 700,000 square feet of GMP and laboratory spaces, as well as supporting spaces in the area of plasmid manufacturing, viral vector manufacturing, cell processing, and testing, so that we can provide our clients a complete end-to-end solutions for everything they need around advanced therapies services. I decided to join this company over 15 months ago, quit my corporate job at the time, because I'm actually passionate about saving lives. And I worked in healthcare my whole life. I got into it by accident, but I stayed in healthcare my whole life because I think it's so rewarding to work in an environment where you have a direct impact on people's lives. And I strongly believe that the science around cell and gene therapy or advanced therapy is working. And there's a big topic to be solved right now. And that's the topic around getting these therapies to the market, develop them, and have manufacturing processes which actually work. That's what I'm passionate about, and that's the reason why I joined this company and why we are building CBM.
Yeah, and you definitely would need a team of people to help you. Are you guys doing a lot of hiring, and how are you dealing with that in this crazy market environment with the labor shortages that exist?
So while I completely agree the market is crazy right now in many different ways, we actually have been able to attract top talent from all sectors, in the industry. We have great folks with backgrounds from CDMO organization, but also from innovator companies, because we believe that blending those two capabilities, cultures, and skill sets helps us to provide our customers a more intimate offer and a closer connection on a partnership level. So hiring actually goes very well for us, and we have been able to attract last year, 2021, over 100 people to join us, and our plan is to hire 500 this year.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And so obviously you've got great talent that you're bringing in. What would you describe as being your leadership style? How do you get the best out of that talent?
So I'm a very participative leader, and I truly believe that leadership is basically around hope and clarity. And clearly what we have to offer in CBM is a lot of hope, because we are in a high growing business, in a very rewarding business, very emotionally attached business. So that's clearly one area of how we attract people and how we bring them in. From a leadership style, personally, I'm an open door person who favors direct communication. Everybody always knows with me where they stand and where the true north is, which direction we have to go. But everybody also knows that I'm very clear in terms of things which are not going well, And I think so far, most people actually appreciate that open, two-way communication. And I'm also very clear on what the excitement is, which we are generating, and why it makes sense to join us. And I do believe that I am able to create an environment where people bring their fullest to the workspace.
Yeah. How have you dealt with that with COVID? It seems like a lot of people are working remotely. A lot of millennial workers want the flexibility. You guys are a lab-based business, right? A lot of people are working in the labs, probably need to be in the lab. So how do you deal with COVID and the rise of Omicron and what's happening at CBM to deal with all that?
So clearly, we are a business where any value we create has to do with somebody standing in a lab or a GMP suite and touching something. So we have to have roughly 2/3 of our workforce actually physically on site in order to conduct our business. So knowing that, we actually primarily focus on protecting the workforce, despite the fact that they have to come to work. And our ability to have most people working remote is limited to roughly 1/3 or maximum 50%, depending on where we exactly are. So clearly, from that point of view, our focus is protecting the workforce. We test our people regularly. We have follow all the CDC requirements, and we allow for work from home, as much as possible. But it is very limited, and I think people understand that the therapies we are working on requires them to come to the workplace.
So the fact they have to be there, and that's King of Prussia, is that
Yes.
So they have to come in, they have to be in King of Prussia. Really, as you're saying, they have to be touching equipment. They've got to
Yes.
be. Yeah. What kind of hours are they working? What's the culture like in that environment? Is it fun work? I mean, is it, I have, like, my son's going to school right now. He's going to come out doing programming. To him, it's like computer games. It's doing anything with computers is playing a game. So he loves that. Are these types of people, and what's the environment like in the culture that keeps them motivated and with you in such a competitive environment?
So clearly, we are fostering an environment where people have fun coming to work. Now, not every day is fun, but for the most part, I think people are just excited about the mission we have as a company. And the fact that anything they do contributes to the development of a therapy, which eventually treats or cures a disease, which today many times ends deadly, is a highly rewarding aspect of the work we are doing. So, and I think that creates in itself an environment which really brings the best out of people. Next to creating a team culture where folks have everything they need in order to, in an agile way, move forward. So we try to reduce bureaucracy or not even implement them, because we are a startup. So it's really up to us to do this as efficiently as we can. And we foster a lot of teamwork. We actually have one of the highest turnouts of our bi-weekly happy hours company-wide, which I ever experienced in the 24 years I'm actually at the workplace. So right now, our company culture works very well. And despite COVID, despite all of these circumstances, we actually see great responses from the workforce, and they're all very happy right now to work for us and with us and be successful as a team.
Yeah. So what are you seeing in terms of improvements to the processes that you're working on? My understanding is that gene therapies and cell therapies are very bespoke. There's not a lot of standardization. It's difficult to make a repeatable manufacturing process. Are you seeing any changes in that? How do we bring the cost of goods sold down on these therapies to get more patients the cures that they need?
Yeah, I mean, it clearly is a bit different depending on what area of advanced therapies you talk about. So let's just focus on two. On the gene therapy side, I think we are seeing significant advancement in terms of moving from more adherent suspension processes to suspension processes. And I do see a lot of efforts in getting the yields higher, which then in turn ensures that less virus has to be injected, which then improves the safety profile of the respective product. So a lot of work goes into this one, next to automation of unit operations and removing humans as much as possible from the process. so that you can work in an error-free environment. And then on the cell therapy side, I think the whole end-to-end integration, specifically when it comes to autologous manufacturing, which means that you take an sample directly from the patient, you bring it to the facility, you do whatever you need to do in order to process that sample and alter the cells in some form or fashion, and then you bring it back to that patient. So a lot of improvement which we see right now happens on that whole supply chain, from the hospital to the facility, through the facility back to the hospital, and then making sure that the process in the facility on these very repetitive operations is as efficient and optimized as possible, and also here taking humans out of the process in order to ensure complete aseptic processing.
So a couple times in that statement, you were talking about essentially reducing headcount, or at least reducing the amount of people necessary to do any single process, automating it more. Where do you see that leading the industry? Where do you see that going in 10 years? Will the automation be more dominant and more important than the people, or how will that work?
Yeah, so I think what the key is to make sure that the direct interaction of a human with the process in an open environment is to be reduced as much as possible, because that introduces the risk of contamination to the product almost by the nature of what it is. While what I see the human capital or the human work to evolve to more and more and more is really to master the automation and be able to control those processes in a more distant way, while we hope that automation takes care of the exact specific manufacturing process.
Mm-hmm. And how has it been located in Philadelphia versus other potential biotech clusters? Have you seen any benefits of being located in Philly, and how did you guys pick this area?
So I don't think we necessarily picked it. We actually got to it because our founder has always been living in this area, and he found this great location we are in, bought it, and decided to build and found the company in. And I had facilities in my previous lives in almost every other part of the world. And so far, I see that here in the Philadelphia region, it's comparably easier to attract talent. And this most likely comes from the fact that large pharma is still contracting and changing their operations in some form or fashion. The fact that we have an enormous amount of great universities around these areas, which have a lot of folks, a lot of folks finishing basically their degrees every year and then come to industry. So I think those two things are helping a lot. And there's a vital, vibrant industry here, and Philadelphia is a very attractive place to live next to the surrounding area. So all of this, in my eyes, makes it right now somewhat comparably easier to hire here in the Philadelphia area.
Does that mean you have no plans for expansion or other offices outside of Philadelphia? I mean, your background, you're German, you've got international skills. Do you see expanding that internationally at all? Or?
Absolutely. The way we build our site here is to make sure that all the great processes and systems we are building is actually, can be copied and pasted someplace else. And some of those therapies even demand the fact that you have to present or produce more respectively in that region. So we will over time expand in other parts of the world and have plans to do so.
Yeah. How quickly do you think your space will be online in King of Prussia? What do you have operational now, and what's going to be operational, let's say, the end of this year or the end of next year?
Yeah, we went online last year in April with analytical development, process development labs, roughly 15,000 square feet. We are coming online this year with GMP operations for viral vector as well as cell therapy, our first roughly 60, 70,000 square feet. And then we built out throughout the next 24 to 36 months, a total of 700,000 square feet, including surrounding support spaces like warehouse and office.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I recently read that I think at the end of last year, that you guys have a new financial partner. Can you tell us a little bit about that press release?
Absolutely. So we have been able to attract one of the very large conglomerates from investment companies from South Korea, SK Inc., to be our strategic investment partner. and we have closed that transaction actually the day before Christmas. This was our Christmas present, and SK is investing $350 million into the Center for Breakthrough Medicines, which will allow us to now expeditiously implement all of these great plans we have and help our clients bringing those life-saving therapies to their patients.
So the clients, is that the expansion plan you had, it was pretty hockey stick, it sounds like, where you go from some tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of square feet over the next 3 years. Is that right?
It actually is somewhat of a, let's say, not too much of a hockey stick. It just appears this way if you take 2021 into consideration. But if you take now as a starting point, it's actually a straight line, but a very steep one.
Right.
The next 36 months.
And will all that expansion, will that end up in King of Prussia, or is that going to be outside the area?
Yeah, so right now, what I spoke about is really here in the King of Prussia area. Any expansion outside King of Prussia would add to that from a space point of view.
Oh, that's phenomenal growth.
Yeah. And how does SK, do you think you'll have some international presence with the introduction of SK to the party?
Absolutely. From my point of view, this will speed up our plans to go international. They already have an investment in France, majority owned, which I'm sure we'll be working with. And they are a Korean-based company, and South Korea is actually one of it's the country with the most approved therapies in that space. So the likelihood of us working with SK and moving rather quickly into an Asian presence is pretty high, and I would actually think that is one thing which will be happening soon.
Yeah, yeah. So what about, I noticed you guys are located at the Discovery Labs campus. So you have some interesting neighbors there. Do you work closely with any of the other tenants on the site? And how do you like being located at the Discovery Labs?
So one vision of our founder, Brian O'Neill, is to create within a 1 mile radius around this facility we are in here right now, a vibrant and great existing environment for biotech companies, CFBM as the CDMO, but also universities and other technology partners. So we actually are sharing this building here, the legacy GSK R&D headquarter, with, for example, GSK. We announced, Discovery Labs announced last year that the gene therapy program of University of Pennsylvania and led by Jim Wilson will be moving into this building. We have Wuxi Biologics here and other few companies. So we are actually working here very closely with partners, potential partners, technology partners, and that's really a nice environment which is being created here in this 1 mile radius.
Interesting. So what keeps you up at night? What are you most worried about? Is it something at the company? Is it the market? Is anything stressful in the near term?
Well, I think given COVID and all of the high demands for biotech production in general created a lot of supply chain constraints in the industry. So, and us being able to execute our pretty aggressive build-out plans despite those supply chain challenges and getting the right equipment at the right time and all the right ingredients and what have you is definitely one part of the concern and a lot of the focus. Next to making sure that, or seeing to some extent that the macroeconomic environments stay as positive as they are right now, which needs to be continuously fueled by clinical success of those therapies. And I think we have seen a few of challenges in clinical success in the last couple of months in the gene therapy field. So continuing to see a flow of good news and make sure that the investment levels in this industry stays the same is very important. And then last but not least, while it is comparably easier to hire in Philadelphia, we have an ambitious goal to find another 500 highly talented people in 2022 to join us in our great culture. And that's clearly another big area of concern, but also excitement for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Joerg, for that wonderful interview. It was great to have Joerg Ahlgrimm, CEO and President of the Center for Breakthrough Medicines. And as always, it's a pleasure with Mike at Brandywine Asset Management. Thank you so much. And thank you all out there for watching Money Matters TV. Our next guest will be Mark Watkinson of Watkinson Capital Advisors. So we'll see you next time when we're talking to Mark. Thank you.